Imagine you're driving home on a familiar road. You barely think about steering, braking, or turning. Your mind just does it automatically. But then suddenly someone asks you to solve a difficult math problem in your head. Instantly, your attention sharpens. You slow down. You concentrate. According to psychologist Daniel Kahneman, these are two completely different ways your mind operates. In Thinking Fast and Slow, Kahneman explains that we all have two mental systems running our lives. The first is fast, automatic, emotional, and effortless. He calls this system one. The second is slow, deliberate, logical, and energy hungry. That's system two, and most of the time, the fast system is driving the car. This book explores how these two systems shape our decisions, judgments, and mistakes, often without us realizing it. Part 1. The Fast Brain System. One is like your brain's autopilot. It helps you read simple words instantly, recognize faces, finish common phrases, and react quickly to danger. It's fast because it relies on shortcuts and patterns. Usually that's helpful, but shortcuts can also create blind spots. For example, imagine hearing this description. Tom is quiet, organized, and enjoys reading. Now, if someone asks whether Tom is more likely to be a librarian or a farmer, many people quickly say, librarian. Why? Because the description sounds like the stereotype of a librarian, but statistically there are far more farmers than librarians. Logic says farmer is actually more likely. This is one of Kahneman's key lessons. Our brains often prefer stories over statistics. System 1 jumps to conclusions because it wants the world to make sense quickly. It fills gaps automatically, even when evidence is missing. It's like a movie editor cutting together scenes so smoothly that you never notice what's missing between them. Part 2. The Lazy Slow System. Now you might think, well, why doesn't System 2 step in and correct these mistakes? Because System 2 is lazy. Careful thinking takes effort. Your brain prefers to conserve energy whenever possible. So unless something feels obviously wrong, the slow system often just approves whatever the fast system suggests. That's why we make snap judgments. We assume confident people are more knowledgeable. We trust first impressions too much. We overreact to dramatic stories and ignore boring data. Kahneman explains this with something called cognitive ease. When information feels familiar or easy to understand, we tend to believe it more. That's why repetition is powerful. If you hear something enough times, your brain starts treating it as true, even when it isn't. It's a little scary when you think about it. Our minds are not perfectly rational machines. They're more like storytellers trying to create a simple, believable version of reality. Part 3. Why we're bad at predicting the future. One of the most fascinating parts of the book is how terrible humans are at forecasting. People constantly believe they can predict business success, relationships, politics, or markets with confidence. But Kahneman says confidence does not equal accuracy. He shares studies showing that experts often perform barely better than chance when predicting complex future events. Why? Because hindsight tricks us. After something happens, our brains rewrite the story so it feels obvious. A company succeeds? We say the CEO had vision. A company fails? We say the warning signs were clear, but before the outcome, reality was uncertain. Kahneman calls this the illusion of understanding. We create neat explanations for messy events because uncertainty makes us uncomfortable. Part 4. Losses hurt more than gains. Another major idea in the book is something called loss aversion. Simply put, losing feels worse than winning feels good. If you found $100, you'd feel happy, but if you lost $100, the pain would probably feel even stronger. This affects our decisions constantly. People stay in bad jobs because change feels risky. Investors hold losing stocks too long because selling would make the loss feel real. We fear losses so much that we often avoid smart risks. Kahneman shows that humans are not purely rational decision makers. Emotions quietly shape almost everything we do, and understanding this can help us make better choices. Part 5. The Two Selves. Near the end of the book, Kahneman introduces a powerful idea. We actually have two versions of ourselves. The experiencing self lives moment by moment. The remembering self creates the story afterward. And strangely, the remembering self usually wins. For example, imagine two vacations. One is amazing for 7 days but ends badly. The other is good for 5 days and ends wonderfully. Many people remember the second trip more positively, even if the first had more total happiness. Why? Because our memories care deeply about endings and emotional peaks, not the full experience. This changes how we think about happiness itself. We don't just live our lives, we also constantly edit and retell them. Learning to think better. At its heart, Thinking Fast and Slow is a book about awareness. Daniel Kahneman isn't saying we should stop trusting intuition completely. Fast thinking is essential. It helps us survive, connect, and function every day. But he reminds us that our minds are full of hidden biases, shortcuts, and mental illusions. The goal is not perfection. The goal is noticing. Noticing when emotions are steering decisions. Noticing when confidence replaces evidence. Noticing when a simple story hides a more complicated truth. Because once we understand how our minds work, we gain something powerful, the ability to pause, think more clearly, and choose more wisely. And sometimes that single pause can change everything. So the next time you make a quick judgment, trust a first impression, or feel completely certain about something, remember Kahneman's central idea. Your mind has two voices. One is fast, intuitive, and automatic. The other is slow, careful, and analytical. Both are useful. But wisdom comes from knowing which one is speaking. Thinking Fast and Slow teaches us that better decisions don't come from being smarter than everyone else. They come from becoming more aware of our own mental habits, the shortcuts, biases, and stories that quietly shape our lives every day. And once you notice them, you begin to see the world and yourself a little more clearly. That's the lasting power of this book.